Hello everyone, in this video our group will be present chapter 2 topic on demand. But before that, let me introduce my group members. I'm Shalihah, this is Dayang, and this is Adilah. So without further ado, let's get into the video. What is demand? The key of demand is ability and willingness to buy. Demand is defined as the ability and willingness to buy specific quantities goods in a given period of time at particular price, ceteris paribus. Ceteris paribus stands for all other factors being unchanged or constant. Before we go very detailed, I will go through about the classification of goods and services. Goods and services can be divided into three categories, which is free goods, public goods, and economic goods and services. Free goods are goods that have no production cost. It is also known as gift of nature, since they are provided by nature. Examples of free goods are air, rainwater, sunlight, river, and so on. Public goods are goods for common use and will benefit everyone. For example, street lights, road, public school, and public hospital. The last category of classification goods and services is economic goods and services. Economic goods are goods of value that can be seen and touched. For example, furniture, computer, and gardening tools. While economic services are intangible things with value that cannot be seen or touched. For example, education, medical care, and insurance. Next, we move on to the law of demand. The law of demand states that when the price of a good increases, the quantity demand for the good will decrease and vice versa. Here we can see the relationship between price and quantity demand are negative. Now, we move on to the difference between individual demand and market demand. Individual demand is the relationship between the quantity of demand by a single individual and its price, while market demand are relationship between the total quantity of a good demand by adding all the quantities demand by all consumers in the market and its price. This is the example of schedule and curve for individual demand. Here we can see that the schedule shows the quantities that the consumer willing to buy at different price and the curve is downslope from left to the right. This is the example of schedule and curve for market demand. The curve for market demand is more flatter and wider than individual demand.
Next, determinant of demands. Determinant of demands will be presented by Adilah Afifah Binti Nazeri. There are 7 factors of demand. First, price of goods. Second, price of related goods. Third, consumers' taste, fashions and preferences. Fourth, consumers' income. Fifth, festive seasons and climate. Sixth, population or number of buyers. And the last one is expectation about future prices. First, price of goods. The price of the product depends on the cost of production, which in turn will determine the quantity that will be purchased by the consumer. The higher the price, the lower the demand. This will cause a movement along the demand curve. Second, price of related goods. The demand for a product is also affected by a change in the price of related goods. Goods are divided into two, which is substitute goods and complementary goods. Substitute goods. Substitute goods are goods or services that can be used in place of another product or services. For example, a bus ride versus an LRT ride, or tea versus coffee. A change in the price of a substitute product affects the demand for the product in the same direction in which the price changes. Demand for a product will increase if the price of a substitute product rises and vice versa. When the price of coffee increases, for example, the quantity demanded for coffee will fall as per the law of demand, and people will look for an alternative. Thus, the demand for tea, for example, will increase. Complementary goods. Complementary goods are goods that are used in conjunction with another product, which means goods that must be used together. For example, pen and ink, and bread and butter. For example, when the price of pens increases, the quantity demanded for pens will fall, and demand for ink will also decrease as both goods are used together. Third, consumers' fashion, taste and preferences. Taste and fashions of consumers change significantly. If a product becomes more fashionable, the demand for it will increase, and if the same product becomes outdated, the demand for it will fall. As taste and fashion changes, demand will also change. For example, changes demand will also change. For example, changes in music, fashion trends or recreation. Fourth, consumers' income. Other things being equal, when income increases, consumers' demand for more goods and services will increase. Goods that increase in demand as income increases are normal goods, such as cars, shirts, and books. Goods that decreases in demand as income increases are inferior goods, such as low-grade rice, low-grade potatoes, and used car. Fifth, festive seasons and climate. During festive seasons, different products will be in high demand. For example, during Chinese New Year, the demand for mandarin oranges will be greater, whereas during the Hari Raya festivities, the demand for lemang and Hari Raya cards will be greater. 6. Population or number of buyers. Demand depends on the size of the total population or the number of buyers in the market. A larger population with a high rate of growth creates a greater demand for goods and services. When the population in one area increases, for example, the demand for houses, bus services, and other goods and services will also increase. And the last one is expectation about future prices. The higher the expected future price of a product, the higher the current demand for that product and vice versa. For example, when the government plans to increase the price of sugar the following week, the present demand for sugar will immediately increase because consumers would want to store for future use due to the expected price hike. If consumers expect the price of cars to fall next year, the present demand for cars this year will decrease because consumers will wait for the price to fall.
Movement along a demand curve versus shift of a demand curve. Change in quantity demand occurs along the same demand curve. In other words, there is only movement along the demand curve. The change in quantity demanded is caused by the change in the price of the good itself, whereas other factors influencing demand remains unchanged. For example, if the price increases from P1 to P2, the quantity demanded will fall from Q1 to Q2. The decrease in the quantity demanded is known as contraction in demand. If the price decreases from P1 to P2, the quantity demanded will increase from Q1 to Q2. The increase in the quantity demanded is known as expansion in demand. On the other hand, change in demand is involving a rightward or leftward shift of demand curve. The change in demand is caused by the other factors influencing demand, whereas the price of good itself remains unchanged. If there is increase in demand with price is constant at P1, the demand curve will shift to the right, and the quantity demanded will increase from Q1 to Q2. If there is decrease in demand with price is constant at P1, the demand curve will shift to the left, and the quantity demanded will decrease from Q1 to Q2. For example, consumers' income, which is one of the factors influencing demand. If an individual experiencing a higher income, the demand curve will shift to the right, whereas if an individual experiencing a lower income, the demand curve will shift to the left. That's all from us. I hope that you guys can understand better after watching this video and will be clean and clear as water on this topic. Thank you. Bye.